All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ramtin Madani. In this presentation, we are going to introduce the NoFeeSwap protocol along with a wide variety of AMM development tools. Basically, we're going to talk about the underlying math behind automated market making. So for those of you who are familiar with the well-known X, Y equal to K formula, or perhaps the curve.phi or Uniswap V3 formula, or perhaps the balancer formula. Here, the X and Y axis represent the amount of the reserves in your liquidity pool. Have you ever wondered what is special about these formulas? Have you ever had ideas on how to improve them? Well, these are actually not easy questions. So I'm going to break them down into the following ones. We are first going to define what a good curve is. What is special about the algebraic equations in Uniswap, curve.phi, and balancer that makes them profitable? Then we are going to characterize the family of all good curves. We will see that the majority of these custom curves do not have a clean mathematical formulation, like x, y equal to k. They may not even have a closed form. Next, I'm going to show you how to store any of these arbitrary curves efficiently on EVM. We're going to introduce a bunch of tools that facilitate working with arbitrary custom curves. Lastly, we're going to show that you do not necessarily have to have any fees or buy and sell a spread in order to make money as an LP. And that is why we have named this protocol NoFeeSwap. In this presentation and the next one on Thursday, we're going to show you that the LPs are better off with alternative approaches. All right. Okay, first we need to come up with a better way of visualizing these curves. The main problem with this geometric illustration is that it does not offer insights on how the liquidity is distributed. To address this, we're going to introduce the notion of liquidity distribution function. Consider the price horizon. The thing that bothers me about the price is the asymmetry. That is why it is very helpful to instead visualize the price on a logarithmic scale, from negative infinity to positive infinity. This way, everything is symmetric. For example, price 0 is mapped to negative infinity. Every price point up there has an equivalent logarithmic price on the below horizon. Price 1 is mapped to the origin, and plus infinity is mapped to plus infinity. On a high level, the liquidity distribution function is like a histogram. To derive it, we need to mark several prices with arbitrary granularity, and then we need to measure the amount of liquidity within each of these intervals. So for xy equal to 1, we can measure the amount of liquidity from negative infinity to the logarithmic price negative 1, which would give us this bar. The amount of liquidity from negative 1 to the origin would give us another bar with equal height. We get another bar from the origin to the logarithmic price plus 1, and from 1 to plus infinity. So we have a bunch of equal bars. Once you increase granularity, you get a flat line from negative infinity to plus infinity. That is what xy equal to 1 is. It behaves similarly, independent of price. Now, if we do the same for a formula adopted by curve.phi, for example, we quickly realize that there is more emphasis on the center. The liquidity is lower on the sides in comparison with the center. And with increased granularity, it gives us the following bump. This is why curve.phi is more efficient for stable pools compared to xy equal to 1. In general, to derive the diagram for an arbitrary curve, you need to solve a system of differential equations. I'm going to go over it really fast. It's just the function C here is the algebraic equation to be investigated, like xy equal to 1, for example. X naught and y naught are the current reserve values for the two tokens, respectively. Q is the logarithmic price. And x and y functions represent the reserve values corresponding to every possible price movement. For the xy equal to 1 curve, this would look like this. Once solved, you will have the token amounts with respect to the actual price values. And then this formula tells you exactly how the liquidity is distributed. All of the details are in our yellow paper. If you plug in the x and y functions in this distribution formula, you'll get a constant value as we demonstrated before. So I encourage you guys to pay more attention to the liquidity distribution concept that we are introducing here as opposed to the actual curve on which swaps take place. Basically, any distribution can be transformed to a curve and vice versa. So from now on, let's focus on the liquidity distribution as opposed to the curve. This is how NoFeeSwap's Solidity code operates. Now, say you want to be creative and you want to make your own custom curve. And you want to make sure that there is a mathematical proof guaranteeing that it is safe and secure for LPs. NoFeeSwap allows you to initialize your own pool with your own custom curve. So here is the interface that you will be facing when you want to initialize a pool. I'm going to start with kernel compact array argument. This is where you can do most of your customizations. It allows you to input any arbitrary piecewise linear liquidity distribution function. You can make it look like this. You can make it look like that. You can make it look like this one. As complicated as you want, whatever your heart desires, as long as it is safe, which is verified on-chain. There are a lot of forbidden maneuvers that you need to comply with. But as long as it is safe, the protocol allows it. Then, when somebody does a swap, the protocol jumps on different pieces of this kernel function and calculates the outgoing and incoming amounts. That happens in the integral library, which calculates the integral of your distribution function from the current price to the target price, which is determined based on either the amount specified or the logarithmic price limits. We have a function in the integral library which evaluates the value of this diagram at a specific point. There is another function which calculates the integral for the outgoing amount, and there is another function which calculates the integral for the incoming amount. Now, we don't have any fees anywhere in the protocol. So a question arises as to how you can make money for the LPs. Let me elaborate. The way traditional AMMs, for example, make money is that they distribute their liquidity like this. There is a big hole in which no liquidity is present, and there is constant liquidity in other areas. The left boundary of this hole is the buy price, and the right boundary of this hole is the sell price. The formula is not really xy equal to k. When they buy, the formula is this one, where x naught is the current reserve of token x. In this case, they confiscate this much of the incoming token x as fee and don't count it towards token y. When they sell, the formula is this, where y naught is the current reserve of token y. In this case, they confiscate this much of the incoming token y as fee and don't count it towards token x. Once the swap takes place, the little zero region is shifted to a vicinity of the new price. And this way, the liquidity keeps growing. This is much more pronounced with concentrated liquidity AMMs out there. We can see the liquidity gap for different fee tiers here. Basically, half of each concentrated liquidity interval is empty. And for stable coins, it is basically very hard to be called an AMM because there are just two constant prices imposed. Now, in NoFeeSwap, you have the option to use a kernel like this, but we would not recommend it. In fact, you can get rid of the buy and sell spread entirely by avoiding the liquidity gap. Then your distribution function would look like this, for example, and you still make money for LPs. As we illustrated before, it could be anything. As long as it is safe and profitable, the protocol allows it. And from a geometric point of view, the curve would look like this, for example. Your liquidity distribution function, the kernel function that you work with, is transformed into something like this. And we have a smooth and differentiable curve. It is not bent, it is not pointed, because there is no spread, which means that the buy and sell prices are identical. A swapper can move the reserve amounts by giving some token X and taking some token Y. Then another smooth and differentiable curve is built on top of the previous one. Here, the blue curve and the yellow curve are tangent, and the new one is within the old one. Then a second swapper can move the reserve amounts on the new curve. And the curve evolves once more to the green one. This can happen again, over and over. And this is how liquidity grows. We went from an initial point to a higher one via a bunch of tangent, smooth, and differentiable curves. So yeah, we are looking forward to creative custom curve ideas from you guys. NoFeeSwap is basically a safe and secure platform for you to satisfy your AMM curiosity and creativity. So the next argument in the initialize interface is the unsalted pool ID, which encapsulates a lot of components. The least significant 160 bits of the pool ID is the hook address. You also have the option to subscribe to one of our incentive pools so that your LPs are rewarded with the protocol's no-fee tokens. The next 20 bits are the permission flags. These include all the hook permissions as well as the pool owner permissions. For instance, there is a specific flag determining whether the initial kernel function can be modified dynamically. The next 8 bits host the offset price, which basically indicates the origin of the price horizon. Isn't that annoying when you have a stable coin and the price constantly transitions from one interval to another one? You can adjust the offset price to avoid that. Lastly, we have the most significant 68 bits, which would allow people to mine a good-looking deterministic pool ID. It is kind of like the create2 EVM opcode. Tag 0 and tag 1 can represent native ERC20, ERC6909, or ERC1155 tokens. They can even represent NoFeeSwap LP positions. You can be as creative as you want with these pools. For multi-tokens, the tag is calculated as a hash of token address and token ID. The exact formulas are provided in the yellow paper. Pool growth portion is the chunk of growth that the pool owner receives, and the rest goes to the LPs. So the pool owner can be rewarded for optimal kernel design. There is a protocol level limit imposed on this value, and because we want to protect the LPs, and there also is a permission flag in the pool ID determining whether it can be changed. The curve array is basically the initial state of the pool. In order to fully understand the hooks, you should learn a little bit about how NoFeeSwap handles memory. Let me share an overview with you guys. During the execution of a NoFeeSwap external methods, every parameter occupies a specific place in memory. All parameters are compactly encoded in memory in their dedicated place. There are setter and getter functions associated with each of these many parameters. And then, when we invoke a hook, an entire snapshot of memory is sent to the hook contract as calldata. This feature costs 0 gas and gives the hook contract access to all of the available input and pool parameters. For instance, the color of the current context is stored here, and then the hook contract can inquire the color of the prior context by looking up this specific place in its call data. This way, you can have as many parameters as you want without errors like a stack too deep. You don't have to pay for memory expansion cost for external calls. You don't have to pay for memory expansion cost for emitting events. This is all handled in memory.sol. All of the pointers, setters, and getter functions are there. You can find a thorough description of all parameters there as well. There also are getter functions to be used by hook contracts. This one, for example, inquires about the color of the prior context by reading the dedicated place in call data. Another thing that I want to mention is the operator contract that allows you to have ultimate flexibility with the core. It can act as a router. It can be used for your method of a slippage control as well. It is built similar to EVM itself. You guys are probably familiar with most of these commands. It has its own memory, and it allows you to do all sorts of arithmetic and logic. You can tamper with its control sequence as well, have if conditions or even for loops. You can interact with other contracts such as wrapped ether and permit2. You can interact with token and multi-token contracts. So you can do some calculations based on the outcome. You can specify an amount and perform a swap. The output will be written on memory, and you can do perhaps another swap based on that. It is a complete Turing machine. And also, when a swap is reverted, it does not affect your call to the operator automatically. What happens is that the success of your swap call is written as a Boolean on memory, and you can perform any logic on that. You may decide to revert the whole thing, or you may perform a contingency swap instead. So, and also this operator contract can be inherited by hook contracts so that it becomes a warm address and you don't pay twice. When you want to interact with the hooked pool, you pay once for both the operator contract and the hook, if the hook uses the operator contract. So that was the primary reason to implement it this way in order to save gas for the people who want to interact with many pools. And there is a singleton implemented, so you can interact with as many pools as you want. You can also deposit your tokens into the singleton and use them very efficiently, transact them far more efficiently than ERC20 standard transfers. And you can also store multiple balances in one storage slot in order to further save gas. For those of you who want to write arbitrage bots, who want to do a lot of swaps, this is very helpful. Our swap function also has some nice features. For example, you can set an arbitrary direction, not necessarily a Boolean 0 or 0 for 1, which helps you do an optimal, perform an optimal arbitrage swap. Many other features that we are going to cover some of them in the next presentation. Please reach out to us and check out our GitHub repositories. Give us feedback, pull requests and everything. We welcome all of that. We just made the GitHub repository public a few days ago. So we are looking forward to feedback from the community. We are on all social media as well. We are looking forward to hearing from you, your insights and your ideas. If you are interested, there are tons of opportunities in our group as well. Thank you very much.